My CEO screamed, "You missed the offsite." Yeah, I was busy closing a $220 deal alone. They fired me anyway. They didn't know about clause 14.9. So I sent one email, and by 4 p.m. I took everything. Funds settled, $220 million. You missed the summit, Morgan. That's how it started. Just 6 words that ended 3 years of my life. I was standing in the transparency room, a glass box on the 28th floor of Vanguard Ledger, the fintech darling of Chicago. Everyone called this room the transparency room because you could see everything. The skyline, the executives, the humiliation. The only thing opaque in that room was the truth. Across from me sat Carter Vale, VP of Operations, and Lydia Mace, HR's quiet executioner. Carter's smirk was a blade in a smile. Lydia pushed a photo across the table, grainy, black and white, printed on cheap paper. It showed me Morgan Ellis walking into the lobby of Helios Systems, our biggest competitor. Carter leaned back, savoring it. "Conflict of interest," he said. "Clause 8.4, you know how this works." I didn't say anything. The fluorescent light above us hummed with that sterile corporate buzz, the kind that makes you feel like your blood is vibrating. He thought I'd beg. He thought I'd cry, argue, make excuses. Instead, I unclipped my Vanguard badge, placed it on the table, and said, "You're right. I've been working 2 jobs too long." The silence cracked. Lydia's eyes darted up. Carter froze mid-breath, caught between gloating and confusion. I stood, straightened my jacket, and slid the badge across the table. It made a small, sharp sound against the wood, like a gavel. "You'll get what's coming," Carter muttered. He didn't mean it as a threat. He meant it as victory. But he was right either way. I walked out without looking back. Past the glass, I saw Ronan Gray, our CTO, the one who used to champion me, pretending to be on the phone near the elevators. He didn't look up. He didn't have to. I could feel his cowardice pulsing like static. The elevator doors closed behind me, sealing me off from 3 years of loyalty, exhaustion, and unpaid overtime. As the elevator dropped, I pulled out my phone. A text blinked on the screen. "Sabrina Vale, Helios Systems. Still good for 3 o'clock?" I typed back. "Yes, I'm free now." When I stepped out into the street, the wind off the river was cold and sharp. The city smelled like metal and rain. They fired me for missing their mandatory team-building summit. But I hadn't been hiding. I'd been in London, closing a $240 million contract they didn't even know existed. They thought they'd buried me. They didn't realize they'd just detonated a 72-hour timer, one I'd built myself. 3 years earlier, I walked into Vanguard Ledger with my heart still stupid enough to believe in mission statements. I was 29, running on caffeine and idealism, ready to build something real. Ronan Gray, the CTO, was the one who sold me the dream. He said, "We're not just building software, Morgan. We're building the financial nervous system of the modern world. You'll be the spine." He meant it back then. Or at least I thought he did. They called me Director of Security Infrastructure, which sounded impressive but meant one person doing the work of 7. I was supposed to build a proactive threat team, 5 hires, full budget, direct line to the board. That lasted 6 months. Then the stock dipped. The board panicked. Budgets were cut like arteries. The new VP, Carter Vale, arrived from a failed startup with a PowerPoint smile and a talent for making layoffs sound like strategy. My department, security, was suddenly a cost center. When I asked Ronan about the promised hires, he sighed and said, "Just hold the line for now, Morgan. You're the strongest person we've got. Hold the line." That became my life. Weekends bled into Mondays. The pager never stopped. My apartment was just a charging station for my laptop. When the breach hit, an exploit that could have cost Vanguard hundreds of millions, I stayed awake for 72 hours straight. Found it. Killed it. Ronan took credit at the next board meeting. I got a $250 restaurant gift card. That was the day I learned what loyalty meant at Vanguard. It meant being the one who takes the hit so the executives can keep their bonuses. After that, my requests for automation, documentation, or even a single intern were deprioritized. That was Carter's favorite word. So I started documenting something else, them. Every ignored email. Every warning buried under action pending. Every time Carter silenced me in a meeting, or Lydia scrubbed my agenda item from the minutes. 3 years of evidence that Vanguard Ledger wasn't a company, It was a cult of ego held together by duct tape and denial. Still, I stayed, because of one promise. Ronan once told me, "If anything goes wrong, Morgan, you're the only one who knows how to reset the system." He said it like a compliment. He didn't realize he was giving me the keys to their kingdom and the map to burn it down. By the end of year 3, my body was falling apart. Insomnia, tremor in my right hand. I remember looking in the mirror one morning, seeing gray skin and hollow eyes, and thinking I look like the ghost of someone who used to care. That night, I stopped trying to save them. I opened my laptop, not to fix their servers, but to fix my life. That's when I met Sabrina Vale from Helios Systems. She'd been in the audience when I gave a small talk at a cybersecurity conference in Boston. Afterwards, she came up to me with a calm, cutting smile. "Your risk models," she said. "They're the first I've seen that treat humans as part of the threat equation. I like how you think." I should have walked away. Instead, I listened. Helios didn't offer me a job, not at first. They offered me a conversation. Weekends only. No client data, no trade secrets, just strategy, just theory. 8 hours on Saturday and Sunday, brainstorming frameworks that would make systems bulletproof. They paid me 10 grand a week for it. I told myself it wasn't betrayal. I told myself it was intellectual oxygen. I told myself Vanguard didn't deserve my loyalty. All of that was true. But what I didn't know yet, what none of them knew, was that Carter's paranoia, Lydia's quiet compliance, and Ronan's cowardice would soon collide in the same glass room. And when they did, they'd trigger something I'd buried deep inside Vanguard's own architecture, the Lazarus Loop. A silent, invisible sequence that ran every 72 hours and would destroy everything the moment I wasn't there to hold it together. For 2 months, I lived a double life. By day, I was Vanguard's exhausted firewall, the person they forgot to thank but couldn't afford to lose. By night, I was Helios's quiet architect, sketching elegant systems that would never collapse under arrogance. It was the cleanest split I'd ever managed. Until it wasn't. It happened the Thursday before everything fell apart. I'd been at the Helios Research Park all afternoon with Sabrina and her lead engineer, Eli Rourke. We were mapping token refresh models and authentication cycles. The meeting ran long, so long that when I left, I skipped my usual detour to park 3 blocks away and parked right in front of Helios HQ. That single mistake, a black sedan with a Vanguard parking sticker, was the seed of my destruction. Someone saw it. Someone took a photo, and someone sent it to Carter Vale. By Monday, the rumor had spread through Vanguard's Slack channels like a virus. "Did you hear? Morgan's consulting for Helios." They didn't know the details, but they didn't need to. Carter only needed the scent of blood. He'd been waiting for a reason, any reason, to take me down. My constant warnings made him look incompetent. My files made him nervous. And my absence at his mandatory offsite gave him the perfect stage. The timing couldn't have been better for him, and worse for them. Because that same week, I wasn't supposed to be in Chicago. I was supposed to be in London, working off books under a confidential contract known as Clause 12.7, a corporate provision reserved for high-stakes, undisclosed negotiations. Only 2 people in the entire company knew about it: the chairwoman, Marjorie Kine, and general counsel, Daniel Wren. I was executing a $240 million integration deal with Etha Maritime Holdings, a global shipping giant that wanted Vanguard's predictive fraud suite. The project's secrecy was absolute. If it leaked, the deal would implode. That's why Clause 12.7 existed, to protect transactions so sensitive even senior executives couldn't see them. But Carter didn't know that. Neither did Lydia. All they saw was a blurry photograph and a blocked calendar. They assumed I was hiding something. They were right, but not in the way they thought. By the time I landed back in Chicago, my badge access had already been restricted. Lydia was waiting with that tight HR smile. "Carter just needs 10 minutes of your time. 10 minutes to end a career." I sat in that glass box and watched Carter play prosecutor with the kind of smugness only small men can summon. The photo, the accusations, the thinly veiled satisfaction. And all the while, Ronan, my old ally, stood 20 feet away pretending to be on a phone call. He didn't even look in. He just let it happen. He knew what firing me would mean. He knew the loop I'd built, the one that required my manual reset every 72 hours, would collapse without me. He knew the entire authentication structure, the heartbeat of Vanguard Ledger would slowly suffocate. He didn't stop it, because admitting the truth would mean admitting that my warnings had been right, that his leadership was built on denial. They didn't realize it then, but in those 10 minutes, Carter and Ronan sealed Vanguard's fate. They thought I'd walk out quietly, humiliated and forgotten. They didn't know I'd already woven my revenge into the system itself, code that didn't destroy, didn't steal, didn't sabotage. It simply stopped breathing when I left. It was poetic, really. A company that refused to listen to its own architect would soon learn what silence felt like. And the best part? They fired me on a Wednesday, which meant the next manual reset was due Saturday, exactly 72 hours later. The first twist didn't come from Vanguard. It came from London. 2 days after they fired me, my personal phone lit up with an encrypted message from Daniel Wren, Vanguard's general counsel. "Do not speak to anyone. We have a problem. Call me from a secure line." I was sitting in my apartment, half drunk on exhaustion and bitter relief when I called him. His voice was tight, the way people sound when they realize they've stepped into a minefield. "Morgan," he said, "you didn't tell them you were in London, did you?" "They didn't ask," I said. "They were too busy playing judge and jury." "Jesus Christ," he exhaled hard. I could hear papers rustling, the kind of panic that only lawyers know, when every document suddenly feels like a bomb. "Clause 12.7 was active," he said finally. "Marjorie Kynes signed it. You were designated as the sole technical lead on the ETHA Maritime contract. They terminated you without board clearance." Meaning, Daniel said. "They just voided the $240 million deal." The line went dead quiet. I felt something inside me shift, not fear, not even anger. Just the calm clarity of someone realizing the gun had already gone off, and the bullet was still in the air. He wasn't finished. "Morgan," he said, voice low, "someone in the executive team leaked your London itinerary to Helios Systems last week. That's how they found you. Someone inside Vanguard wanted you out before the deal closed." The silence stretched. I could hear my own pulse in my ears. "Who?" I asked. He hesitated. Then, "We're still confirming, but the digital signature on the leaked travel authorization came from Ronan Gray's admin account." I laughed, actually laughed. A small, disbelieving sound that came from somewhere bitter and tired. Ronan, the same man who told me I was the spine. The same man who watched me get fired without lifting a finger. He hadn't just stood by. He had pushed the knife in. Daniel kept talking, but I wasn't listening anymore. I was staring at the city through my apartment window, watching the lights blur into static. I realized then, Ronan hadn't been protecting Carter. He'd been protecting himself. Because if the ETHA Maritime deal succeeded, the board would know who'd actually built Vanguard's core systems, me, not him. And if the deal failed, he'd need a scapegoat. He made sure both outcomes were covered. By leaking my London itinerary to Helios, he'd planted proof that I was compromised. By staying silent while Carter fired me, he let the board think I'd betrayed them. And by removing me from the project, he guaranteed the system would collapse, making it look like I'd taken it down out of spite. Every move was calculated, every word rehearsed. He didn't just betray me, he weaponized me. And that's when I remembered something I'd written months ago in my private documentation. Every system has a failsafe, except trust. I pulled out my old Vanguard laptop from under the couch. It was already locked out, the credentials revoked, but I didn't need access. The system I built, the Lazarus Loop, was self-contained, running autonomously on their live servers. Without my manual refresh, it would choke log by log until the whole authentication core stalled. No passwords, no logins, no transactions. I didn't have to touch a thing. All I had to do was wait. And for the first time in years, I slept through the night. Friday morning, 8:12 a.m., I woke up to sunlight, not the blue glow of a monitor, not the red flash of a system alert, but actual sunlight. For the first time in 3 years, my pager wasn't buzzing. And somewhere inside Vanguard Ledger's data center, the Lazarus Loop was ticking into its final cycle. 72 hours. That's all they had left. I made coffee. Black, bitter, deliberate. Then I sat at my kitchen table, opened my personal laptop, and built a single private folder. Project, Remnant. Inside, I started organizing everything I had: the Slack messages Carter deleted, the meeting minutes Lydia altered, the incident reports Ronan buried under deprioritized. Every ignored warning, every risk memo stamped low priority. By noon, I had enough to bury a dozen careers. But that wasn't the plan. Not yet. I didn't want revenge in headlines. I wanted something slower, something they'd feel, so I started outlining my conditions. If when Vanguard came crawling back, I'd make them pay for every minute of silence they'd forced me to swallow. I wrote it down like a manifesto. Immediate reinstatement of every laid-off engineer Carter cut to save budget. Full severance and back pay for anyone forced out in restructuring. A new security division, 8 headcount, fully funded, reporting directly to the board. Public admission of error, naming Carter Vale, Lydia Mace, and Ronan Gray as responsible parties. My consulting fee, $60,000 per hour, 4-hour minimum, wire in advance. I didn't expect them to agree to all of it, but I knew they would agree to something once the system crashed and no one else could fix it. That night, I met with Sabrina Vale from Helios in a quiet downtown bar. She was dressed like someone who'd already read the next chapter of the story. "You're quiet," she said. "Just thinking about gravity," I said. "Gravity?" "Yeah. How fast things fall when the supports vanish." She smiled, slow and sharp. "You built the loop, didn't you?" I didn't answer. I didn't have to. Sabrina leaned closer. "When it collapses, you could walk away. You know that, right? You don't owe them a damn thing." "I know," I said, "but they owe me and I collect." Her eyes flicked up. "Then make it clean. No traces, no hacks, no sabotage. Let their own negligence kill them." "It'll hurt more." That line stuck with me. Let their negligence kill them. Saturday morning, 3 a.m., that was the deadline. The system would start choking itself to death, and by Monday morning, they'd be begging for help. I went to bed early, calm. But just before I drifted off, I remembered something Daniel Wren said, that Marjorie Kine, the chairwoman, had signed my Clause 12.7 authorization herself, which meant she knew where I was. Which meant she knew Carter and Lydia had just executed the company's most critical project lead without board approval. And if she hadn't intervened yet, it was for one of two reasons. Either she didn't know the fire was coming, or she was waiting to let it burn. Saturday came and went like a storm building behind glass. By evening, I could feel it, that hum, that pressure, that tension in the air right before everything breaks. But I wasn't at home. I was in Marjorie Kine's penthouse. She'd called me personally that morning. Her assistant's message was short. "Miss Kine requests a private meeting. Bring nothing connected to Vanguard systems." 1 hour. I almost didn't go. But curiosity is a dangerous thing. When I walked in, Marjorie was sitting by the window, watching the lake shimmer with winter light. She looked older than her press photos, sharper too, like a knife that's been used for decades but never dulled. "Miss Ellis," she said without turning. Or should I say, the woman who built my company's spine. That stopped me cold. "You know about the Lazarus Loop." She smiled faintly. "I know everything worth knowing, and I know you didn't sabotage us. You built a lifeline. They just cut it. So you knew they were firing me." She finally turned, her expression unreadable. "I wanted to see who would do it." It took me a moment to process that. She hadn't stopped them because she wanted the collapse. "You set them up," I said. Marjorie's tone was matter-of-fact, almost kind. "I gave them enough rope. I wanted to see if Carter's arrogance, Lydia's loyalty, and Ronan's cowardice would strangle what was left of the company. They didn't disappoint." "You sacrificed the deal," I said. "The Etha Maritime contract was never about the money," she said softly. "It was about exposure. We've been running too long on borrowed competence. This crash will purge the rot." I needed it to be real. My stomach dropped. She hadn't just let it happen, she'd orchestrated it. "You let them destroy the company just to prove a point." Her eyes narrowed. "No, I let them destroy themselves. You of all people should understand that. Every system needs a reset, Miss Ellis, even the human ones." It hit me then. She wasn't angry about losing $240 million. She was building something else behind the wreckage. A new company. A leaner, faster, cleaner version of Vanguard, one she could own outright after the stock tanked and the board scattered. The Lazarus Loop wasn't a problem for her. It was an opportunity, and I was her insurance policy. She'd known about Clause 12.7. She'd known about the London mission. She'd known that once they fired me, I'd be the only person who could resuscitate the system. She'd planned all of it: my exile, their collapse, and my inevitable return. "You used me," I said quietly. No, Marjorie said, standing. I chose you. I needed someone brilliant enough to build the system, principled enough to walk away, and ruthless enough to come back when they begged. And when I do, she gave a small, knowing smile. When you do, you'll have leverage. I'll have ownership. We'll both win. For a long moment, we just stared at each other, predator to predator, both knowing exactly what we were. When I finally left her penthouse, the sky had gone a deep, bruised purple. My phone buzzed with a dozen missed calls, all from Vanguard. It was starting. The loop was collapsing. And Marjorie Kine's quiet war had just gone nuclear. By Sunday morning, the headlines were spreading. Vanguard Ledger faces major system outage. Trading delays impact global clients. They called it a temporary performance issue. But I knew the truth. Vanguard wasn't sick. It was dying. The Lazarus loop had run its final cycle at 3 a.m., and now the company that ignored every warning was choking on its own silence. I watched the chaos from my apartment window, news tickers bleeding red while my phone buzzed nonstop. Calls, emails, even a text from Ronan. Please, we need you. I'll make it right. Just tell us what to do. I didn't answer. Not yet. Because I couldn't stop thinking about Marjorie Kine. Something about her calmness the night before, how ready she'd been for this, gnawed at me. Around noon, I called Daniel Wren, the general counsel who'd warned me days earlier. His voice was shaky. She's cleaning house, Morgan. Half the board's been forced out already. She's buying their shares outright. She's calling it a strategic privatization. Privatization. The word hit me like ice water. She wasn't saving Vanguard. She was devouring it. You said she signed my Clause 12.7 authorization, I said slowly. She did. Why? Does that clause give her temporary executive control if I'm terminated? Yes, oh God, yes. She's invoking it right now. That was her plan. She didn't just want to expose her incompetent executives, she wanted to own what came after. By letting Carter and Ronan destroy the system I built, she was triggering the perfect legal storm. A stock freefall, a leadership collapse, and a technical failure that only one person on Earth could fix. Me. And because of Clause 12.7, she could use my reinstatement as the board's justification for handing her emergency control of the entire company. Every warning I'd written, every risk I'd documented, every word they'd ignored, it had all become evidence that she could weaponize. She was never the victim. She was the architect. The fall was the plan. Marjorie Kine wasn't trying to save Vanguard Ledger. She was trying to erase it and resurrect it under her full command, with no board, no oversight, no dissent. And me, I was the resurrection key. If I helped her, she'd rebuild her empire. If I refused, she'd let the company burn and make me the face of its failure. I understood it finally, the horrifying symmetry of her cruelty. She hadn't chosen me because I was loyal or brilliant. She'd chosen me because I was predictable, because she knew I couldn't stand to watch a system die that I'd built with my own hands. She was betting on my conscience. And for a few moments, I hated her for being right. My phone rang again. Daniel, whispering now. Marjorie's demanding an emergency session tonight. She's using your reports as evidence that the company was doomed without your oversight. She's calling you the missing stabilizer. She's rebranding the collapse as salvation, I finished. Exactly. I hung up. My heart was steady, cold. If Marjorie thought she could manipulate me into rebuilding her empire, she didn't understand what I'd become. She wanted resurrection. She was about to get it, but not the version she imagined. Because this time I wasn't coming back to save Vanguard, I was coming back to bury it. Monday, 9:04 am. The sky over Chicago was gray and wet, and Vanguard Ledger was on fire. Not literally, but in the way a company burns when the entire world realizes it's hollow inside. I didn't need to hack them. Their destruction was self-executing. By the time I logged into my new Helios workstation, Vanguard systems were paralyzed. Every authentication handshake failed. Clients were locked out. Millions in transactions frozen midstream. And the financial networks, CNBC, Bloomberg, even Reuters, were calling it the collapse of a market pillar. At 9:17 am, my phone rang. Unknown number, I answered. Morgan Ellis, speaking. This is Evelyn Kine, acting CEO of Vanguard Ledger. Of course, she'd changed her title. I assume you've seen the situation, she said coolly. You're the only one who can stop the hemorrhage. I didn't answer. We're prepared to compensate you fairly. Define fairly. A pause. $200,000 for a 2-hour consultation. I almost laughed. Try 10 times that. And that's just the opening fee. Silence. Then, you're not in a position to negotiate. Oh, Evelyn, I said, my voice steady, you have no idea how wrong you are. I dictated my terms as she listened, furious but trapped. $500,000 wire transfer up front to a holding account. Written admission of wrongful termination, naming Carter, Lydia, and Ronan. Full reinstatement of all engineers cut under Carter's restructuring, with 6 months severance. A new autonomous division of security infrastructure, funded for 10 years, reporting directly to the board. And the final term, your public letter of apology will include one sentence, word for word. Vanguard Ledger's collapse was the direct result of ignoring Morgan Ellis's warnings. You're insane, she said. No, I replied, I'm inevitable. She didn't argue again, because somewhere behind her voice I heard it, the chaos, the shouting, the panic. She knew she had no choice. At 10:02 a.m. my banking app pinged. Wire transfer, $500,000 received. At 10:03 I joined the emergency call. 20 faces appeared, executives, lawyers, engineers, all looking like they'd been awake for 48 hours. Ronan was there too. His face gray, eyes hollow. He started to speak, I cut him off. We're not here for apologies, I said. We're here for triage. I walked them through the fix, slowly, deliberately, every command, every explanation. Not to help them, but to make them understand. Every failure I described was one they'd created. Every system choke, every log overflow, every manual dependency, they'd all been in my reports for years. I didn't yell. I didn't gloat. I just made them see it, line by line, as they typed my instructions like students taking notes from the teacher they'd tried to destroy. When the authentication gateway finally pinged green again, a hush fell over the call. Someone started crying, one of the junior engineers, I think. I leaned back in my chair. Congratulations, I said. You've stabilized the patient, but the damage is permanent. Morgan, Ronan started, voice breaking. Please, I clicked leave meeting. 2 days later, Vanguard's public statement went live. A full-page apology. It named every executive. It named me. It admitted everything. Their stock plummeted 42% overnight. Marjorie Kine, now stripped of her CEO title by regulators, lost her board seat the next morning. I didn't watch the press conference. I was too busy signing a new contract at Helios Systems. Vice President of Resilience Engineering. Full budget, full team, direct report to the CEO. My first hire, Rhea, the junior engineer who'd been crying on that call. She quit Vanguard the day after the crash. We built something cleaner, smarter, humane. Every system documented, every role backed up. No heroes, no single points of failure. One Friday night, I got an email from Vanguard's new leadership. They wanted to open a dialogue about collaboration. I hovered over the reply box for a moment, then typed just 2 words, access denied. I closed my laptop, poured myself a glass of wine, and stepped out onto my balcony. The air smelled like rain and endings. They had taken everything from me, my time, my trust, my peace. And I had given them back exactly what they gave me, nothing. Except now, every time their executives saw my name in the market, every time Helios landed a new contract, every time a client left them for us, they'd remember the day they fired me for missing a summit. And they'd remember what I told Carter Vale as I slid my badge across the table. You're right, I should only focus on one position. And I did, mine.